Welcome to Discovering. Tonight we talk about a few new regulations for the upcoming deer season.
I think that we've had 10 years to witness what our current policies are doing, and nobody's happy.
And we visit a cabin here in the UP that's used for both deer camp and fish camp. So sit back and relax. It's Monday night and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
At the July Natural Resources Commission meeting, new deer hunting rules for the 2024 deer season were passed by the NRC commissioners. I could just quickly regurgitate what those are, which there really isn't much change here in the UP, but like most things, that's not the whole picture. A slew of recommendations, 20 to be exact, were on the table proposed by teams from the Upper Peninsula and Lower Peninsula, and some came directly from the NRC commissioners. How many regulations that the UP DMI recommended did the NRC approve last week?
0.
Let's backtrack. In response to the dismal 2023 deer season, the NRC requested that the DNR create a deer management initiative, and teams in the UP and the Lower were selected to help evaluate and give their input on deer management and habitat and how to improve it.
The group makeup was various stakeholder leaders that we've typically and historically worked with, but we've also worked with non-affiliated or independent individuals as well, knowing that a lot of the groups that we work with don't represent all of our hunter numbers. And we actually searched for a few individuals that were quite critical of our management actions over the past couple of years and invited them to the table because we felt like it was really important to have all the different perspectives for deer management represented.
The initiative teams would develop regulatory and non-regulatory recommendations to submit to the DNR.
The DNR then took our recommendations and they crafted a wildlife order, and then they submitted that to the commission for their consideration.
Then the Natural Resources Commission, which is an independent 7-member panel that has been appointed by either our current governor or previous governors, can either reject parts of that order, they can approve it in full, or they can amend it and make changes. The Natural Resources Commission voted to change the recommendations from this DMI group. And what transpired was essentially a continuation of the prohibition to take antlerless deer in those northern zones. So really nothing has changed in that regard. Antlerless harvest opportunities, even with archery equipment, is completely restricted in those high snowfall zones. In the mid snowfall zones, they reduced the antlerless quotas in DMU 351, which is the eastern half of the Upper Peninsula, from 1,000 to 0. And in the western half, they reduced it from 1,000 to 500. And then in addition to that, they restricted antlerless harvest opportunities in that mid snowfall zone, that you cannot hunt or take an antlerless deer after December 10th. So you can still buck hunt with archery equipment after that date, but after that date, that December 10th date, you cannot shoot an antlerless deer.
And in the very southwest corner of the UP, a 3-point APR was restored in DMU 122. Another regulation change made by the NRC but delayed until the 2025 season is the Youth Liberty and Independent seasons will be antlerless only statewide. Here in the UP, all signs point to a low deer population, but everyone in the hunting community has a different opinion on how to improve it.
I think the most that we can probably agree on is what a healthy end product looks like, but how we get there is very different.
Doe harvest was a hot button topic within the UP DMI team.
When we talk about UP deer management, specifically antlerless harvest in the Upper Peninsula, things are broken down into three different tiers, and we try to align that with high snowfall, mid snowfall, and low snowfall zones as best as we can. In our high snowfall zone, we've historically been extremely restrictive with antlerless harvest, especially over the last 10 years. You really can't legally shoot an antlerless deer in those units. In our mid snowfall zones, we have a very limited quota that's been applied to present some type of opportunity. And then in our low snowfall zones, it's fairly wide open. Anybody that wants to go shoot an antlerless deer pretty much can. Generally speaking, in the low snowfall zone, pretty much everyone is in agreement. Those more liberalized opportunities should be continued. The real concern, the real rub occurred in certainly the high snowfall zone and even the mid snowfall zone. There's a group of individuals that are very much against any type of opportunity provided in the high snowfall zone and felt that those restrictions should be expanded to the mid snowfall zone. You've got another group that was willing to concede certainly some antlerless harvest opportunities in the mid snowfall zone, but at least wanted the opportunity to take antlerless deer, particularly with archery equipment, in the high snowfall zone. So what came out of the final recommendation was this scenario that really tried to strike a compromise between those two extreme views. And what that looked like was in the high snowfall zone, hunters would now have the opportunity to at least take an antlerless deer on their deer combination license through the early part of archery season. The idea there being it would provide some opportunities to folks that wanted to put a deer in their freezer, but it wouldn't be too impactful that people would really be likely giving up their buck opportunities to use on an antlerless deer unless they felt it was absolutely necessary. Furthermore, it would protect, the potential for migrating deer, later in the season. And with that mid snowfall zone, the quotas would be dramatically reduced all the way down to zero. That's the scenario that was developed out of the DMI teams.
The department's stance on the antlerless harvest recommendation is that it would not be that impactful on the population.
I think we've looked at this as an opportunity to provide a little bit more opportunity, even potentially erring on the side of, could this help things in the long run? Potentially, maybe. If the habitat is really that poor, we need to give it a chance to recover a little bit. And it's really difficult to grow a deer herd and recover habitat at the same time. It has to be sort of a one or the other type thing. And if we're really focused on habitat, then we need to reconsider how deer are being managed in order to have that habitat recover. So we thought that the recommendations made by the UP DMI team was a reasonable compromise between those two very extreme positions that occur.
The commission debated, recessed, revoted, and ultimately rejected the team's recommendation to provide more antlerless harvest opportunities across the UP.
Hunting for us it's not a weekend recreational activity. It's part of who we are. It's part of our identity as Yoopers.
After the 2023 deer season and the formation of this DMI team, I think hunters anticipated big changes to come in the form of new regulations. But that did not happen. I checked back in with Jordan Hoover about the NRC's decisions since I interviewed him previously about the DMI and their recommendations.
Obviously, we never expected that the commission would rubber stamp the entire package, but we certainly thought that there were recommendations that were very solid, we were very happy with. Bluntly stated, it was a bit demoralizing to our team. I mean, we had spent months on end pouring our heart and our soul into this effort, into the DMI, and to watch it all burn in minutes was disheartening. I think that we've had 10 years to witness what our current policies are doing, and nobody's happy. Everything that we did, everything that crossed the finish line had to be, number one, grounded in sound scientific evidence, and two, defensible with data. That was our admonishment from the beginning. That's your mandate. Whatever comes out of this has to fall within these parameters. And I think that we did a good job of that. I felt like everybody was pretty open-minded, and we put the biology to the forefront and kind of set our opinions to the side.
The UP DMI's package of recommendations was just that, a list of recommendations that applied together would achieve a desired outcome.
That was one of our issues as well with the commission, is that they were not understanding how our regulations work together. They wanted to pick everything apart and look at each individual recommendation, and we kept having to explain, well, I did. That's not how we created it. So we created a package, and all of these individual pieces work together in concert to achieve a desired outcome. And for an example, our team agreed that the APR proposal on the single tag was acceptable if doe with a bow was reinstated, because that's still allowing for hunter opportunity. It's still allowing UP families to put meat on the table, and that was important to us. We were very sensitive to that. So it's not one or the other, it's both. And the commission really struggled to be able to grasp that. We never had any illusions as a whole, the whole DMI team, that we were going to fix the herd with a couple of regulatory tweaks. And anybody that ever thought that, you're just simply not dealing with reality. It took a lot to get to where we are, and it's going to take a lot to fix it. It's going to take time. It's going to take diligence. Flipping a couple regulatory levers isn't going to put more deer in the woods next year. That's not how it works. We knew that. The chief issue above all is habitat. And even those of us that adamantly disagree about other topics like doe management, for example, we all agreed unanimously that habitat is a crippling issue for our UP deer herd that has to be addressed.
The focus of this wildlife conservation order that the NRC voted on was on deer regulations for the upcoming season. The UP team brought forth recommendations like habitat improvement and predator management that were tabled by the commission for further discussion or pushed off to other advisory groups. Chairman Tom Baird stressed that this is not the end of the discussion. I asked Jordan if there was any silver lining to participating in this deer management initiative.
And I think that if there's a silver lining at all, it's that I do see a budding crop of new leaders in the deer community starting to emerge.
To recap, here are the 3 regulation changes here in the UP for the 2024 deer season. I did talk to Chad and Jordan at length, and I will post those full interviews on my Discover the UP YouTube channel by next week. I met Drew Youngdyke, an avid fly fisherman, at the Michigan Outdoor Writers Conference this spring, and he invited me out to his fish camp to learn more about fly fishing for northern pike.
A lot of the flies I use for pike are just downsize a musky fly. I'll just kind of tie that, but I'll tie it smaller. A couple size smaller hook, more of a 6-inch fly rather than a 8 to 9-inch fly.
Drew's Fish Camp is a quaint Finnish-style lakeside cabin in Gogebic County.
This place is really special to our family. My great-grandpa was an iron miner in Ironwood, and he bought this place as he was nearing retirement. The hard work that he put into being an iron miner and what that took, I look at it as that's what allows us to enjoy it now. I bring my son here who's 5. You know, that would have been his great-great-grandpa. So because his great-great-grandpa, you know, worked in the iron mines, he gets to come here and fish and relax in the summer. So we're pretty lucky to have that. It's styled after the traditional Finnish cottage. It's got a sauna, it's got a husikka, a 2-holer for those of you who don't know what that means.
Even though Drew is not a Yooper, his family roots are here.
I came up here every summer growing up, and it's the most home place that I can go back to from being a kid. I love the UP. I've been trying to convince my wife to move up here for at least a dozen years. It's not gonna happen, but I'm not gonna stop trying.
And this place is where Drew learned his love for fishing.
When I'd come here in the summers, my great uncles would take me a little bit, but I really started fishing at all, trolling for pike with my grandpa. He had a boat. I was poor, broke, and in college, and I couldn't afford a boat. So to fish on my own, I figured I could afford a cheap pair of waders and a starter fly rod. So I started fly fishing for trout then, and I did that for a long time, not very well. And I was at a Michigan Outdoor Writers Conference, and a friend of mine named John Cleveland told me about fly fishing for pike. And when he told me that, suddenly the world made sense. You know, I could fly fish for pike. We have this place here, and really since then I haven't missed a year of coming back here. I get up here a few times a year. It's kind of nice for fly fishing because it's a fairly shallow lake, so there's not much that I can't reach with a fly. There we go. But I typically find them off these points and in these little kind of mini coves. It's not like when you're in a trout stream and you're reading where the seam is or where the hole might be. You know, it's open water, so you don't necessarily know where they'll be. I don't use sonar or anything like that, so it's blind casting, so it's just a lot of persistence and fan casting, making sure that you figure 8 at the end in case there's a pike following your fly that you can't see. It's a lot like fly fishing for muskie, which is a little bit more popular, but I like to tell people that if you had a muskie that was a little bit smaller, prettier, and liked to eat flies more, then you just have a pike. So, well, and just like if you're reeling in a daredevil, you're not just gonna do like a straight retrieve. You're gonna give it a little action, a little motion, a little start-stop, and you do the same with a fly. So you kind of vary your retrieve speed, you vary your cadence. So you might do like strip, pause, fast, long, slow. Because pike will at different times be keyed in on different motions, and just like you would with a lure, you do the same thing with a fly. And of course you can't cast it at nearly as far as you can a lure. So you kind of self-impose that limitation. So it's a lot of casting, a lot of work. You get a good workout, especially if you're paddling a canoe. And as you saw out there, sometimes you're paddling with one arm and trying to figure 8 with the other. But it's fun. It's an active thing to do outdoors, and there's a lot of worthwhile active things to do outdoors, and this is what I like to do.
The beauty of this lake and cabin and its wildlife inspired Drew to tie his own flies.
And one of the things that I love about it, though, it's not just the fish in the lake, but when we're sitting here, we can wake up to the loons on the lake, the loons calling. The eagles will fly up here. Even back in the 80s when you didn't see eagles many other places, you could see them here. And a lot of the flies that you'd buy for pike would have lead eyes. And I wanted to make sure that I could tie with non-lead, and that every fly that I used was non-lead. It's to make sure if I lose them in the lake, I'm not gonna accidentally poison a loon or an eagle. This one is probably my favorite. This is called a Buford, classic red and white for pike, just like a daredevil lure. But that big bucktail head pushes a lot of water, makes a lot of commotion, and makes the tail kind of wiggle back and forth. So as you strip it through the water, it will kind of come, and then when you stop, it'll turn. This is a deer hair popper, but with a rabbit strip tail. So that'll make a lot of commotion sitting on the top of the water, and I kind of use colors to give the general impression, hopefully, of maybe a bluegill. But this one worked out well today. This is called a river pig, and it uses non-toxic dumbbell eyes to give it weight, and really just mimics a perch. It rides hook up.
Thanks, Drew, for sharing your story and your little slice of paradise here in the UP. And I'm glad we were able to get that one fish on camera.
This is a classic. Not even you should have been here yesterday, you should have been here this morning.
That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.